familiar faces, but if I don't know you, I'm Patty Smith, and you're programming here. It's nice to have you. Nice of Buttonwoods to help us arrange this, to have Hank Phillippi Ryan with us today. It's amazing. Hank is the USA Today best-selling author of 15 suspense novels. She has won multiple prestigious awards for her crime fiction, including 5 Agathas, 5 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's HDTV, I always get that wrong, where she has won 37 Emmys, 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for her groundbreaking journalism. National book reviews have called Hank a master at creating suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. Her novels have been named Best Thrillers of the Year by Library Journal, New York Post, BookBub, Pop Sugar, Real Simple Magazine, and others. And today she'll be discussing her new book, which is one wrong word, a twisty, non-stop story of gaslighting, manipulation, and murder. Hank lives in Boston with her husband, a renowned criminal defense and civil rights attorney, and we are just so happy to have you with us today. Quick reminder, turn off cell phones if you haven't already, and visit the book table at the back on your way out if you'd like to purchase books. They make great gifts. So, without further ado, welcome Hank.
Thank you so much. This is great. It is so nice to see you all, and thank you for sitting in the front row. You know, I have been to so many events where there'll be chairs and chairs and chairs and people are filled except for the front row. And there have been times that I've actually moved the chair to say, like, now you're in the front row, you second row people. So it is really wonderful to be with you here today. I looked out my back window this morning at some bushes. I was on the second floor of our house. I looked out down into the garden, and I saw some bushes that have always been green. And I thought, well, look at that. You know, I didn't know those flowered. There were beautiful red flowers in the bushes. And when I looked closer, it was just fallen leaves. The red leaves had fallen onto the bush. So, you know, for one brief second, I thought they were secret flowers. But no, fall is here. And that, you know, you can feel it, can't you? It's so interesting. On the day you wake up and you think, I need a sweater. And you think, maybe I won't have iced coffee today. Maybe I'll just have hot coffee today. And there's those moments, we all have them when the seasons change. It's also funny to be writing a book that takes place in the season where the book isn't. A book that I'm working on right now takes place in the dead of winter, and I've been writing it over summer. And I have a little yellow sticky on my computer that says, it's cold, to remind myself that the people in the book are cold, you know, because you can just forget. But anyway, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, a little bit about television, a little bit about the book, and then I'll answer any questions that you have. Easy, non-controversial questions, okay? Like, you know, all right, you got this. So I have been a television reporter for 43 years. I know. I've wired myself with hidden cameras and confronted corrupt politicians and chased down criminals and gone undercover and in disguise. And I have loved my work at Channel 7 and all the television stations where I worked. But one of the things I really learned from that is, well, let me put it this way. My husband and I don't celebrate the anniversary of the day we met. We don't. We celebrate the anniversary of the day before we met. And we call that You Never Know Day, because you never know what wonderful thing is right around the next corner, right? Something that you couldn't have predicted, that you couldn't have even hoped for because you had no idea it was even in the future. And then it happens and our lives change. And my whole life has really been a series of you never know days. I grew up in really rural Indiana, so rural that you couldn't see another house from our house. And my sister and I used to ride our ponies to the library. We did, to get books. And we would fill up the saddlebags with books and read up in the hayloft of the barn behind our house. Isn't that a picture? And that's where I fell in love with storytelling, though. That's where I fell in love with Nancy Drew. You read Nancy Drew, right? I love seeing the nodding heads, good. The Clue in the Old Clock and the Clue in the Diary, right? Which I thought was Clue in the Dairy for like the whole book. And I'm thinking, shouldn't there be cows? I mean, I finally figured it out. And then I read every single Sherlock Holmes short story and novella. Come on in, I'll start over. I read every single Sherlock Holmes short story and novella. And I think that from Conan Doyle, I learned about clues, and I learned about characterization, and I learned about secrets. And I also sort of think I learned about the architecture of a mystery, what you had to have at the beginning, what you had to have in the middle, what you had to have in the end, and how in the end the puzzle pieces would all come together. The music of telling a story. And then I read all the wonderful Golden Age authors, Ngaio Marsh and Josephine Tay and Marjorie Allingham and Dorothy Sayers. I love those. And then I remember, and this is, you never know what's around the next corner. I remember very profoundly reading Murder on the Orient Express. How many of you have read this? Okay, if you haven't, go right to Buttonwood Books afterwards. I'm sure they can dig it up for you, but I will not spoil it except to say, I think I was about 13 when I read it. And I remember thinking, how did she come up with that ending? How did she fool me? How did all those puzzle pieces come together in a way that's completely logical, and completely surprising, sort of inevitable, but surprising. And I absolutely loved it. And that's when I thought, back then, maybe when I grow up, I'll be a mystery writer. Maybe I'll be a mystery writer. But then somehow another thought came to mind, and that was, maybe I should be a detective, not a mystery writer. Maybe I should be Poirot. Maybe I should be Miss Marple instead of writing about those people. And I think it's really amazing how my life has turned out to I did both of those things, right? As an investigative reporter, I'm certainly a detective. And now the second half of my life, I'm a crime fiction author. So that little girl in the hayloft got to have both dreams come true, which is really funny. But our lives are not linear. And everything we plan, none of that is going to work. You know that. The things change along the way. And sometimes things happen to us that are going to be formative that we don't realize at the time. And one of those things happened to me when I was about 14. I was the most bookish, nerdy, unpopular little 14-year-old you could possibly ever imagine in your entire life. No friends, no dates, no parties, no anything. All I did was read, which served me well. But nevertheless, it wasn't that much fun at the time. So I don't know if they still have this, but back in Indiana, back then, they had the superlatives. Do you still have that, like best dressed and most likely to succeed and most popular? Okay, so you know what I mean. Well, I didn't get any of those. I was not voted any of those. I was voted most individual. Now, no, you don't want that. I mean, now it's cool. Now, most unique, most thinking out of the box. Then it was just like most weird. It was most misfit. I knew what that meant. It meant most misfit. It meant most unlike the rest of us. That's what that meant. It meant they were saying it's most, we don't want to sit with you at lunch. And that's what it was like. I will tell you, lest you think it was a good thing, they put my picture in the school paper upside down to show how weird I was. And that was not fun. I mean, I still have that school paper. And I was so unhappy. I mean, unhappy as only a 14-year-old girl can be unhappy, doomed forever, never going to be happy again. And I went home and I was crying, and I said to my mom, this isn't fair, this isn't fair, the world isn't fair, it's not fair. And my mom said, she cuddled me as moms do, if we're lucky. And later though, she took me aside and said, listen kiddo, you're griping because the world isn't fair. She said, let me tell you something, honey, the world isn't fair. The world isn't fair. And she said, and you're just going to have to get used to it. And I remember thinking even then, why? Why do I have to get used to it? And I vowed, and I mean, I was 14, and I vowed even then that when I grew up, I was going to do something that mattered. I was going to leave a mark. I was going to make a difference. I was going to do something to change the world, and I was going to stick up for the little guy like people did not stick up for me. And that was my vow. But again, you never know what wonderful thing is around the next corner. So I went off to college, and instead of learning to be an activist, I majored in Shakespeare. Now, I have to tell you that my mother was not happy about that. And my dad said, oh, honey, you know, you're going to be unemployable, you know. This is valueless. But I loved it, I adored it, and still do, and I persevered. But when I got out of college, that's when I decided it was time to change the world. And I hesitate to tell you this in these times, but I decided back then, way back then, to go into politics. And I worked for several political campaigns back home in Indiana. This is the late 60s, back home in Indiana. Sadly, not one candidate I ever worked for actually won. And that is when if you listen to the universe, as I do, that is when the universe is saying to you, find another career. Exactly, do something else. So that is the moment when I decided that I would be a journalist. I decided, like, if I'm a journalist, if I'm a reporter, I can change the world. So this was 1970, and I want you to keep that in your mind, 1970, because it's important. In 1970, I went to the biggest radio station in Indianapolis, and I said, I'm here to apply for a job as a reporter. I want to be a radio reporter. And the news director said, great, yes, we do need another reporter here. Where was your last radio reporting job? So I'm like, well, no, you know, I've never been a radio reporter. And he said, well, that's okay, that's fine. Television reporter? No. Newspaper reporter? No. Magazine reporter? No. And he's looking at me like you've all had job interviews, and this one is not going well, because what am I doing applying for this job? And he finally goes through, you know, he says, have you ever, I don't know, done an interview or written an article or done anything that has anything possibly within the realm of anything about journalism in any way? No. He said, did you go to journalism school? No. Did you ever take a journalism class? No. And he's looking at me and he goes, when you were a little girl, did you hand out mimeograph newspapers door to door in your neighborhood? Anything? No, I had nothing. So finally, I won't take you through the torture of this doomed interview, but finally he said, look, you seem like a very nice young woman, and I could probably teach you how to be a reporter, but I don't have time to do that. He says, besides, you're supremely unqualified for this job. He says, can you give me one good reason why I should hire you? And I said, yes, I can. I said, because your license is up for renewal at the Federal Communications Commission right now, and you don't have any women working here. And then I just smiled, and the next day I had my first job in broadcasting. Thank you. I mean, it's a good story, and we can laugh about it now, and that's why I tell it now. But seriously about that, it's interesting because it wouldn't work now. You know, all these years later, when I go to journalism classes now to teach, I tell students, you know, if I walked into Channel 7 right now and said, you should hire me because I'm a woman, they'd be like, yeah, so is everybody else in this building, sister. You know, my boss is a woman, and her boss is a woman, and her boss is a woman. And all of us who started our careers in the 70s, when the equal opportunity laws were changing, and we got that, and we understood that, and we took advantage of that, and we moved in and took our rightful place, we are what Jane Pauley calls the class of 1970. The women who moved ahead, not just in journalism, but in every realm of society in the 70s. We were the ones who changed the world. And I'm really proud to be part of the sort of breaking the gender barrier in broadcasting. Barbara Walters and Leslie Stahl and Jessica Savage and Jane Pauley, we all got our jobs because we were women. There's just no question about it. But the key was, could we keep them? The key was we needed to be more powerful and more passionate and more successful and more unique and more original and better in order to keep those jobs. And we did, and we did. The other thing I love about that story is that at that moment in 1970, I was a little bit brave. I was a little bit brave. I mean, I was naive, certainly. I thought, I'm going to get this job. They've got to give it to me, which was silly. But I took a chance that day. I took a chance. I walked through a door that should not have been open to me because I was not experienced. I took a chance and I found my calling. I took a chance and I followed the vow that I had made when I was 14 years old, all because of being brave. All because of being brave. And you know this, that why do we lose that bravery? Now that we're supposedly older and wiser, why instead of trying to do what we'd love to do we say, oh no, it's too late, I can't do that, they'll say no, it won't work, it'll be too hard. You know this, just follow your dreams, just do it. I mean, if you take nothing from this morning, except my book from Buttonwood Books, because no pressure, it's just their livelihood and my career on the line, no pressure. But if you take nothing from today, I want you to remember that it is never too late to follow your dreams. It is never too late to do what you want to do. If you want to write a novel or write another book or write that book of poetry or learn a new language or put together finally that compendium of recipes that your family has always wanted you to do, I'm the proof. I didn't start writing fiction till I was 55, which was 20 years ago. And I can tell you how that started because you never know what wonderful thing is around the next corner. I was sitting at my desk at Channel 7 and I just had a good idea. I had a good idea. And I came home and I said to my husband, I have a great idea for a novel. I'm going to write a book. And Jonathan says, great, honey. He says, do you know how to write a book? And I remember this so purely. I said, how hard can it be? How hard can it be? I've read 1 million novels. I soon learned, as Ray knows, how hard it can be. But I was absolutely devoted. I was compelled. I was driven. We had, let me put it this way. I worked every night, every weekend, every vacation. My poor darling husband ate a lot of carry-out salmon from Whole Foods during that time, but I was determined to write that novel. I knew it was a good idea, and that turned out to be my first book, Prime Time, which won the Agatha for Best First Novel. And as a result of that one moment, as a result of that one good idea, as a result of me not saying, oh, I can't do that, as a result of me saying, you know what, I'm going to try that. I must do this. I know I can do this. As a result of that, my life changed and my entire career changed. And I'm now here talking about, oh, the light went away. I'm now here talking about, let me show you. I'm now here talking about book 15. I mean, my 15th book. Is that not amazing? One wrong word. And let me tell you a little bit about One Wrong Word and where it came from and why I wrote it and how I got there. Harlan Coben once told me to write the kind of book you love to read. Because if you love the book while you're writing it, that passion will come through on the page. And your reader will feel that you are loving writing the novel. So I don't like graphic sex in books, so I just don't put it in. I don't like graphic violence in books, so I just don't put that in. I don't like inappropriate language, so I just don't put that in. But what I do like is gaslighting and mind games and manipulation and deception and lies and a little bit of murder and that is what goes into my novels. I call them just one more chapter novels, because I want you to say to yourself, I have to read just one more chapter. I want you to miss your stop on the T because you're reading these books. You know, to forget to get off the train. That is my entire goal, is to keep you up at night. So one wrong word is, if you like Harlan Coben, Lisa Scottolini, Lisa Jewell, Lisa Unger, Lisa Gardner, all the Lisas, Lisa, and Hank, you will love One Wrong Word. Let me tell you a little bit about it. And I think one way of talking about this book is to talk about the cover for a minute. If you look at the cover of One Wrong Word and you put it up to your face, sort of like this, you will see, is it working? You will see that I kind of look like the woman on the cover. And every single one of you, I want to get a picture of every single one of you with this book face, because it also looks like every single one of you. No matter who puts this book to their face, it looks like you. And we did that on purpose. The publisher and I did that on purpose, because we want you to realize that what happens to Arden Ward, the main character, could happen to you. And moreover, probably already has happened to you. I was thinking in writing this book, I was thinking about rumor and gossip and scandal and betrayal, and how powerful those words are, and how one wrong word, especially if it spreads, how one wrong word can change your life. And that is what happens to Arden Ward, the main character of this book. One wrong word can ruin your life. And no one knows that better than Arden Ward. Arden Ward is a crisis management expert who realizes that she's going to have to solve a personal crisis, a devastating crisis in her own life. As I said, Arden is a crisis management expert who makes her living by persuading the public that a certain thing is true, by telling the stories of other people, of being the spokesperson in other people's lives and other people's dramas and other people's tragedies. But one day, Arden Ward gets called into her boss's office and she's about to be fired. Arden is about to be fired because there is a rumor that Arden has been having a passionate and scandalous affair with a powerful client. Now, Arden would never do that. That's not true. We love Arden. She's fabulous. She would never have an affair with a client, but her boss believes the rumors. Her boss believes the rumors, and Arden is about to be fired. So Arden gets one chance to save her career, and that is by rehabilitating the reputation of a man named Ned Bannister. Ned Bannister is a big real estate mogul in Boston who's just been found not guilty in a horrible drunk driving accident. But even though the jury acquitted him, even though the jury found him not guilty, the court of public opinion still thinks that Ned Bannister is a murderer. And that has ruined his life, and that has ruined his wife's life, and that rumor and that gossip and that jury verdict, even the acquittal, has ruined the lives of his two young children. They knew that Ned was not guilty, and they thought they would get their life back with the not guilty, but no, the court of public opinion is still devastating. So Arden spends what might be the last 2 weeks of her job trying to help this shattered family and trying to convince the public that Ned Bannister is not a killer, but a good guy. But as the truth begins to emerge, so do Arden's doubts. And she begins to wonder if she's using her skill her skill with language, her skill with persuasion, her skill with words. She's wondering if she's using her skill as a crisis management person to convince the world that Ned is good. Maybe instead she's actually protecting a murderer. So two strong characters facing off in a high-stakes psychological cat and mouse game to prove their truth about a terrible crime. But which character is the cat and which character is the mouse? Ooh, I love that reaction, thank you. And that is One Wrong Word. So where did it come from? And it's kind of an interesting story. I was thinking about, Story ideas, where do your ideas come from? People always wonder, and I've got to tell you, as authors, we wonder about that too. Sue Grafton used to talk about the magic of the author brain, how at one moment you have no idea for a story, and at the next moment it sort of starts to climb up the tendrils of in your mind, and your brain starts changing, and this idea starts to bloom, and it turns into a story. And you never know, as I said, you never know when the story idea was going to come. So I was thinking about, and this is 2 years ago at least, I was thinking about watching sensational, notorious murder trials on television, how they're covered what we call wall to wall on TV. You can watch Casey Anthony, you can watch O.J. Simpson, you can watch all kinds of other sensational trials on television. And when we do, even on the opening moments of the trial, we think we know whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty, don't we? We go in, we're not on the jury, but we go in with a bias. We go in with a decision. We've already decided this. And as we listen to the trial and as we hear the evidence, we sort of tend to pick the evidence that underscores what we already think, and we discard the rest. And when the trial is over, if the jury agrees with us, we think, yes, that was right. They made the right decision. And if the jury disagrees with us, no matter what the jury says, we still think they're wrong. We still think they're wrong. How can that be? So I started thinking about the power of public opinion. And then I was thinking about the power of persuasion. You've seen crisis management experts at work, remember when there was poison in the Tylenol, and they dragged out somebody to say, no, it's all safe, there's no poison in the Tylenol, go ahead and keep buying this. That was a crisis management expert. Movie stars use them, famous people use them, corporate executives use them, politicians use them. They are the spinners. They are the people who come out and take the microphone and tell us how to think. Tell us how to make their decisions, tell us their sides of the story. And then we decide, based on whoever we are and whatever our experiences are and whatever our personal biases are, whether we understand them or not, they're the reason that we make the decisions that we make. I mean, how powerful is that? I also thought about if I said to you, if we were having lunch and I said to you, listen to this that I heard about this person, you would say, ooh, tell me, right? Ooh, tell me. And it's that ooh, tell me reflex that fascinates me too. Because why is it that we love to hear the gossip and the dirt and the scandal and the rumor, even though we say, oh, no, I don't care about that sort of thing. You kind of just want to know, and then you can decide whether to discard it. So that's what went into the creation of Arden Ward, this crisis management expert. And what would be, as authors, we try to figure out what's the worst possible thing, the most interesting possible thing, the most devastating possible thing that could happen to someone. And that is, what if a crisis management expert, I thought, had to face a crisis of her own? How would she handle that? So I thought, ooh, that's a good idea. So I'm writing that now. I don't know what happens next in my books until I write the next sentence or the next paragraph or the next scene. I don't know. So it's a surprise to me along the way. Every page is a surprise. So and that's sort of what gets me to the computer every day is I think, ooh, I can't wait to find out what happens next. And the only way I can do that is by writing it and find out what happens. So that's what empowers me to come to the computer. So I'm writing along about Arden Ward, the crisis management expert. Something bad is about to happen to her. Something terrible and life-changing is about to happen to her, because all of my books are about people who have the rug pulled out from under them. They begin with the moment when everything the character thinks is true and right and good and safe in the world gets taken away from them. and they have to figure out how to get their lives back. They have to realize that there must be a way to reclaim their power and see who they become when they go through whatever tragedy or devastation that it is. They're about empowerment. And at the end of my books, I want you to think, yeah, that's exactly what should have happened. You go, and it gives you some power as well. So I'm writing along, and I realized at one moment, I was, maybe a tenth of the way through the book, I realized that I wasn't really writing about Arden Ward. I was really writing about myself. And when I thought about it, it really sort of stopped me in my tracks. I was in my office looking out the bay window at the sugar maple tree in the yard, and I thought, oh my golly, this is me. This is what happened to me. I'm writing my story. Should I continue to do this? Because it was so personal and so destructive at the time that I thought, maybe I should just stop. Maybe I should just stop. And then I thought, no, it's fiction. I'm making this up. I'll just make it into fiction. So here's what I remembered. And I'll tell you, I did not set out to write this book. Somehow, my author brain offered me this when the time was right. When I remember I told you I worked in politics back in Indianapolis, back in the late 60s. And I was 19. I was a worker bee. I was the gopher. I went to get coffee. I folded and stuffed news releases into mailing envelopes. I was great at that. And I absolutely loved it because I thought, politics, we can change the world. I'm here in the corridors of power. We're going to make life better. I'm doing this. I'm a community person. I'm patriotic. I'm fabulous. I'm strong. I'm tough. I'm going to do this. And I was walking down the hall, and I heard two of the campaign moguls talking in an office, and they didn't know I was listening, but I heard my name. So of course I stopped and eavesdropped like crazy to hear what they were talking about. And the first one was saying something like, so have you heard the rumor about Hank and Jim? And I thought, Jim is the campaign manager, the highest of the high in the echelons of the campaign. They said, have you heard about Hank and Jim? And I'm thinking, Hank and Jim what? Hank and Jim what? I don't know anything about this. And the other guy says, yeah, Jim has a massive crush on Hank. It's just everywhere. The rumor is everywhere. And I thought, the what? I've never heard about this. There's nothing between me and Jim. He's like so old. He's 40. And I was 19. And there was nothing. There was nothing. And the other guy says, yeah, and if it's terrible, and everybody's talking about it, and if Jim's wife ever hears about this, it's going to be a mess. And so I thought, what are you talking about? This is terrible. This is not true. But I'm listening like mad, and now I'm really upset. And so then finally the person says, so have you decided what we should do about it? What do you think we should do? And the first guy says, well, I have decided we really do need to do something. And what we need to do is fire Hank. And I thought, fire me? Fire me? I'm thinking, I don't think I'm your problem. I think Jim's your problem here. I'm not your problem. But it made me real. Now, nobody got fired, and the campaign ended, and they lost, haha. But it made me realize that in that moment, that 19-year-old little innocent me, I was the expendable one. I was the one that they could throw under the bus. I was the victim. I was the one that they could dismiss and discard because they needed to keep Jim. Jim was the powerful one, and I was the vulnerable one, and I was the one that was going to take the blame for something that I had nothing to do with. And I realized at that moment that they were willing to murder my reputation to get what they wanted. They were willing to murder my reputation to get what they wanted. Now, I wasn't fired, so that specter of, I wonder what happened in that campaign, I wonder what she did not follow me wherever I went, although you can imagine it might have if that had happened. So that narrow escape And that seething anger about the unfairness of how I was treated, that became an element of one wrong word. And I was able, in one wrong word, to have Arden do what I should have done. To have Arden say, bless you, to have Arden say what I should have said. And I have to tell you, it was really fun to put those words in Arden's mouth and to have Arden work to get her power back like I never did. I sort of got to, I don't know, knit up the raveled sleeve of history through fiction. And I, you know, at the end, as I said at the end, I just went, yeah, I got you, this is over, and this episode is tied up with a bow and done. And so interesting because you never know what wonderful thing is around the next corner. As I keep saying, you never know what adversity is going to turn out to be, I could even say, the best book I've ever written. So thank you, Jim, for that idea. I'm really proud of this book, and I have heard from so many people that things like that have happened to them or happened to someone that they know, and that this book helped them feel empowered. If there is anything that's the DNA of a Hank Phillippi Ryan novel, it's that. It's empowerment, it's confidence in ourselves, and it ends with redemption and optimism and hope. So yes, it's a fast-paced cat and mouse thriller that I hope will also change your world a little bit and change the way you feel about yourself and your world and maybe even your friends. So it's interesting, you know, do you know the Stephen Sondheim musical Sunday in the Park with George? You've seen that? I'll tell you quickly. It's about the French impressionist pointillist painter George Seurat, and there's a scene in the play where Seurat, the artist, is on stage by himself, and he has a blank sketch pad, and on the sketch pad he draws a hat. He draws a hat. And he looks at it and he realizes, he sings, I'm not going to sing, he sings, look, I made a hat where there never was a hat. And he realizes in that moment that he has created something new and original and beautiful and shareable and lovely. He has created art out of nothing but his own imagination. Something that didn't exist before is now real and tangible and shareable only because of his imagination. And it's a song about creativity, and it's a song about joy, and it's a song about imagination, and it's a song about how we as human beings are the only creatures who can do that. We can make something beautiful, something new, out of nothing but our own imagination. We can create new worlds that never existed before, out of nothing but our own imagination. And that is what I do every day at my computer. I'm making hats. I'm making hats. I'm making new worlds that never existed before. You will care about Arden Ward. You will wonder about the beautiful Cordelia Bannister, Ned's wife, and why she's so terrified of her husband. And what will you think about Monelle Churchwood, the determined and maybe obsessive district attorney who only wants to put Ned Bannister in prison? Those, you will care about them, and I made them up. I made them up. Those are my hats. Those are my new worlds that I have created for you. And if you know, it's interesting, when I finished my first novel, I called my husband into the room and said, sweetheart, watch this. And I typed the end. And then I burst into tears. I burst into tears. I did, because I knew that whatever happened after that, I had done what I always wanted to do. That little girl in the hayloft, you know, so many years ago, had finally followed her dreams. But of course, I shouldn't have cried when I typed the end, because it wasn't the end at all. It was the beginning of this wonderful new second half of my life and career. And I am so honored that you invited me here today. Thank you so much for coming to share this with me. Thank you. So kind of you. Thank thank you. So kind of you. We do have time for questions. As I said, easy, non-controversial questions. Yes.
First of all, I just want to say that I've been to a lot of author talks, and this was one of the most compelling talks I've ever been to.
Here, you just say that right into the microphone and tell us your name and what you've written as well.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, do.
I wasn't expecting this. My name is Laura DeSisto, and I wrote a memoir called Resurfacing. So anyway, about me. So my question for you is...
You were saying how good this was.
Yeah. Yes. Very, very compelling. But the question is, you referred to the first book that you wrote at 55, which is so impressive. And you said that when you sat down, you realized you didn't know how to do it. How did you learn how to do it?
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. She was saying, I will quote her because this is making my day. She said she's been to a lot of author talks and this is one of the most compelling she's ever heard. So thank you. I'm going to make a poster. I'm going to make a poster about it. You know, that's a great question because I had never written a novel before. Laura was asking how I learned how to do it. I had never written a novel before, but what I had done for the 30 years before that as a reporter was there were years and years where I wrote a story every day, a news story every day. And if you think about what a news story entails, it has a beginning and a middle and an end. It has a character you care about with an important problem that needs to be solved. You're tracking down clues and doing research and following leads and reading documents. You want the good guys to win and the bad guys to get what's coming to them. And in the end, you want some justice and you want to change the world. So whether it's an investigative story or whether it's a novel, that's the same thing. A character who you care about, who has a problem that demands to be solved. And you have information about what that story is. Like Once Upon a Time, Once Upon a Time, when we were little and someone put us on their laps and said, Once Upon a Time, we know that rhythm, we know that architecture, we know what to expect. So with my 30 years in television at the time, writing news stories, I knew how to do a story. And I have to say, I'm thinking about this now, when I'm writing stories for television, I don't want you to turn the channel. It's just so easy to click, click, click and turn on something else. And when I'm writing novels, I don't want you to be able to put them down. I want you to keep turning the pages. So it's not only subject and subject and stakes, it's also storytelling and pacing. And so all of that were things that I'd probably written, billions of words in those 30 years with the same goal of being entertaining, enlightening, new, challenging, rewarding, and life-changing. All that stuff has to go into a television story. Besides that, it has to be new. It has to be new. And so all of those elements that go into a news story have to go into a novel as well. So I think I sort of pulled from that. And it was hard. Even then, I'll tell you that my first draft of my first novel was 723 pages long. That's how much I didn't know what I was doing. I had to cut 400 pages. I had to cut 400 pages. So it is a process, and it was a journey, and I have to tell you, I'm now almost finished with book 16, which I'll tell you about if somebody wants to ask. I'm almost finished with book 16, and it is not any easier. Because I really give 100% of myself to every book. But I'm always raising the bar on myself. I'm always challenging myself. I'm always trying to get better. So I like to think that the 100%, this is mathematically impossible, but that the 100% is more every time. It's a bigger stuff in the 100%. So I'm always trying to have people say, oh, this is even better than her last one. This is even better than her last one. And that's something that's always top of mind for me. Who else has a question? I just gave you a question. Okay, yes.
Oh, wait a minute, what was the question?
No, just ask about mine.
Oh, you went to the next book, I'll ask that next.
Okay.
You mentioned in this book, there's a portion of it that was personal.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit of your personal story. Did that fuel many of your other books? There was a kernel of a personal
That's
story?
interesting, really perfect question. We were talking about that One Wrong Word has a bit of my personal story in it. And when you read it, and I hope you will, no pressure, when you read it, you'll see that it isn't the same story at all. I mean, it's not at all the same story, and the same thing doesn't really happen except for that one little domino. And my other novels, my other 14 novels, none of my books are my television stories made into fiction. It's not like I took one of my news stories and glossed it over and changed a couple names. It's not like that at all. But all of my experiences as a reporter and as a human being go into the books. That's why if someone assigned us all to write a short story about, I don't know, the man who came into the room, every single one of our stories would be completely different, right? Because it wouldn't be about us, but it would be from us. It would be from us. And that's why each author is different. That's why each book is different. That's why, they say there are only 2 plots in the universe. A stranger comes to town or someone goes on a journey. That's all. Every book is one of those. And if you change the point of view, that's only one. Something happens is what a book is. Something happens that we care about. So no, they don't come. They're not my news stories made into fiction. But only I could write these books. Only I could write them because only I am who I am, and only I have done what I've done. And only I care about what I care about, and putting all those things, I care about truth and justice and empowerment. And you'll see that in all my books, but every single one of my books is different. Great question. Great question.
Oh, I want more.
Yes.
What about your next book?
Oh, the next one. Oh, what a good question. Thank you. The next book, which honestly is due on Monday. Monday. What is today? Wednesday? I'm so doomed. Okay, it'll all work. It always works. The next book, which I am in love with, is called All This Could Be Yours. All This Could Be Yours. And it's about a debut author with a surprise best-selling novel who gets sent on a glamorous national book tour by her publisher, only to realize that she's not exactly alone on the tour. She seems to be being followed by someone who is bent on destroying her career, and not only that, but ruining her family that she left back home. And she fears it may be the result of a Faustian bargain she made years ago. And she wonders, is it time for this? Is this the moment that the deal with the devil, that my deal with the devil, is this the moment that my deal with the devil is coming due? All this could be yours. I'm really excited about it. Plus, it's superly meta. It's so funny. It's about a novelist on book tour with a book called All This Could Be Yours. And I will be an author on book tour with a novel called All This Could Be Yours. So her book is called that, and my book is called that. And it is honestly a love letter to readers, and a love letter to bookstores, and a love letter to libraries. So I'm really eager for you all to read it. I think it's really special. It's really different. I'm incredibly enthusiastic about it. Do we have any more questions? No.
Is there an average, how long does it take you to write a book, or just one flow much easier?
Yeah, how long does it take to write a book? Well, there are a couple of constraints, and there are a couple of reasons for this answer. My first book that I was just seeing if I could do it, that took about a year and a half to write. I'm a fast writer, and I've been a writer, so I think it was a little bit different for me, and I'm used to, I can write a news story in the car on the way back from the tornado and get it on the air at 6 o'clock, so I'm a pretty fast writer. But my first book was done when it was done. But now, every year since then, I've had a contract, and the book is due in a year, so it takes a year. that's how long I have. So actually, in sort of drilling down a little bit, it takes about 8 months to write the first draft, to find, I'm sort of in search of the story, since, as I said, I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm in search of the story for 8 months, and at the end of 8 months, I have a thing that's kind of like the book, that I know the book is in there, and now all I have to do is find it. And so then I take about 2 more months finding the book and making it the book that it was meant to be. But it takes a year. Some people can do it faster, which my friend Reese Bowen and Jen McKinley write 3 books a year. I don't know, for $1 billion. I could write 3 books a year, but they wouldn't be good, Why? And some people take 5 years, and some people take 10 years. So it really just depends on the author. Yeah. So you are marvelous. I have had any more questions. I don't want you to be shy. If you have a question about television or life or writing or anything like that. Okay, going once, yes, with Molly in the back.
Do you still do Help Me Hank?
Do I still do Help Me Hank? I love this. I love this so much. I still work at Channel 7 as sort of counsel. So I still work there, I still take story ideas, but I'm not really on the air by any means as much as I used to be. I still love it, and I still send stories that come to me to the investigative unit who's working at Channel 7 now. But Help Me Hank, I have to tell you, I have never seen a brand that is that sticky as Help Me Hank. I haven't done Help Me Hank for, I bet, 10 years. And I have to say that I'll walk down the street and someone will yell, "Help Me Hank" at me. And it is so gratifying. Can you imagine? And I'll tell you quickly the story of how that came to be. Really funny. My news director years ago, I want to say 15 years ago, seriously, called me into her office and asked me to watch a tape of a guy who had pitched a news feature to him, a consumer feature to her, and it was called Call Paul. And Call Paul was, there was one problem. My investigative stories for Channel 7, I'll tell you very, very quickly. My investigative stories for Channel 7 are big and affect a lot of people and can make real changes. We've changed many laws as a result of our stories. We've changed many lives as a result of our stories. We've sent people to prison and gotten people out of prison as a result of our stories. My investigations are very big picture stories. But Call Paul was like, one person had a problem with the tree guy. And Paul would help him solve the problem of the tree guy. One thing, very small. So I watched this story that poor Paul had created, and I said to my news director, "Yeah, that's good. He's fine." I said, I could make that better though. I said, I could do, Help Me Hank. And she's like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. So I'm so sorry, Paul. You would have had this job, but I doomed you." And that is where Help Me Hank came from. Just this spontaneous moment. You never know what wonderful thing is around the next corner, and that's where Help Me Hank came from. And thank you for remembering that. Yes.
Would you ever write a book about Help Me Hank?
Would I ever write a book about Help Me Hank? Now see, that's a great question, because my first answer was, how would I do that? And then the second answer was, well, would I be the person who was helped, or would I be the helper? So then I thought, well, I guess I'd be the helper. So would I write a book about a consumer reporter or an investigative reporter? And then I think, yeah, I did. That's kind of what primetime is. Primetime, FaceTime, airtime, drive time. Star, this will make you laugh. They're still in print. Primetime, FaceTime, airtime, drive time stars Charlotte McNally, who is a 46-year-old television reporter in Boston, who's worried that she's getting too old for television and wonders what happens when you're married to your career in TV and the camera doesn't love you anymore. Now, Did I make that come from real life? You know, yeah, of course I did. But the one thing that I can do in writing about a reporter, and it did work, and I love those books, and they were very, you know, they were bestsellers and much awarded, is that as a reporter, I can tell you the story of what happens, the news story, but you will never know from my news stories how I feel about it. You know, am I afraid? What have I left out? What am I not saying? What am I emphasizing? Who do I give time to and who do I not give time to? All those things you will never know in real life, but in a book you can know. In the Jane Ryland books, there's a reporter. In my book, Trust Me, there's a reporter. And that's why fiction allows me to reveal something about real life that I couldn't reveal to you in real life. So yes, great idea. And on that great idea note, I want to thank you again for coming today. 3 quick things. One is, let me just do a little survey. How many of you are on Instagram? Okay, just a few. So you're going to follow me on Instagram at Hank P. Ryan. How many of you are on Facebook? Oh, more. That's interesting. Follow me at Hank Phillippi Ryan, author, on Facebook. Sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to have I know this word, a notebook, to sign up for my newsletter, and I hope you will do that. I'll tell you one more time that you can buy, well, I'll do it this way. You can buy your very own copy of One Wrong Word from the fabulous Buttonwood booksellers, Buttonwood Books. Remember, as my agent always requires me to say, a signed book makes a great gift. Thank you so much.